There is a fifth dimension.
A dimension of sound.
Damn it, Frank! We tell him to be quiet. I spilled my hot cup of Uranus again.
A dimension of sight.
Hey, Arch. I'm gonna sock you in the puss.
A dimension of mind.
Nan Adams, is that you?
Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fifth Dimension and Twilight Zone podcast. Jacob is still waving. His arm is hurting so bad and so on and so forth, but he's still waving for your entertainment. Of course, we're back to talk the Rod Serling's favorite podcast of three people, the greatest episode podcast ever, Twilight Zone, all that good stuff. You know, it's a podcast, people. We talk and talk and talk and do things and say things, and
Gabby as hell is what he means.
Yeah, exactly. As always, we're on audio feeds like Anchor and SoundCloud and Audio Boom and Cups of Uranus and Eyeballs and all that good stuff. We also
and
are very
books called
still.
Witchcraft.
Yeah, I know. And we're always still in our valleys, you know, because we're old. I don't know where we're going with that. Anyways, we're here to talk an episode. I don't know if I want to talk about. We might just go back to what we were talking about. Japanese horror. So maybe we should do that instead. I think Triv would like that. I think Jacob would like that. But instead, we have a duty to please that Twilight Zone booty, you know. Yeah. But anyways, before we begin, I of course have my two co-hosts, my two droogs, the two people that light my life and fill up my heart and beat people with dildo statues and all that stuff. Of course, that is Jacob and Triv. They are here to, sing in the rain and all that good stuff. So how the hell are you guys? How's life? What is it like in your valley?
I don't have enough dick statues.
No, you don't have enough sitting around.
No,
you're not singing in the rain.
No,
my dick statues are in another room. Sorry,
that's okay. You gotta keep him away from Jeff, don't you?
I didn't know we were gonna need him today. Yeah, I don't want to give him in the eye.
Is it in the same room with your Demolition Man figurine, your statue?
They are in that statue.
They're in the statue.
Is it so? It's in that statue.
So it's the Demolition Man pinata statue.
It's right next to my big dildo bat that I whacked my Sylvester Stallone nude statue that's hanging from the ceiling.
Yay!
People are like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh yeah. Just go back about a year, you'll figure out what we're talking about. I guarantee it.
You have to go back and watch every single episode.
I know, every single one,
Twice.
All 76 episodes plus a couple. So so you guys are doing good. Everything good? Yeah. Anything you want to talk about before we get into this episode?
Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and get into it.
I don't know if I want to rip the Band-Aid off. You know how much that hurts?
Being a fucking pussy and rip the Band-Aid off.
I'm very hairy. I'm hairy.
And
it hurts.
Suck it up, cupcake.
I mean, just because you like the scuttlebutt doesn't mean you know.
It didn't hurt so bad if you use medical tape when you rip it.
There you go.
Off.
See?
It still hurts though. And I put a lav mic on my chest to rip it off.
Ouch.
Chest hairs.
So when you get around your Sylvester Stallone Demolition Man statue, you just put the tape on and rip it off. Is that what you said?
Well, absolutely. You know, you gotta get that Brazilian wax in before me and Sly.
Get your 3 shells.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about 3 shells?
No.
Let's talk about what the 3 shells do.
Would you just get on with the goddamn thing, you dork?
Yeah, I guess this will be the shortest intro ever because Triv wants to get through this episode. She agrees that this episode sucks, and I agree too. So yes, we're talking to the Twilight Zone today. We're talking season 3, episode 11. We're talking about Still Valley, an episode directed by James Sheldon, written by Rod Serling, based off a story by Manly Wade Willem.
His name is Manly.
Yeah, Manly. He's very manly. He wrote a story called Still Valley.
I mean, there wasn't any women to be seen anywhere in this episode. There were quite a few gents, so
yeah, you had to be manly in the war.
We're men, manly men. We're men in tights.
Production code 4808. Original air date November 24th, 1961. The right after, I'm sure, Thanksgiving Day episode. What a way to celebrate Thanksgiving with an episode that blows. What can I say? Stars Gary Merrill, Vaughn Taylor, Ben Cooper. They got him from Suck the Blow.
I mean, consistency, I guess.
Right.
Originally this also aired 100 years after the beginning of the Civil War.
Yay, Civil War. The greatest war in history that nobody wanted. Yay, Civil War.
Yay, Civil War.
Yeah. Yay, the war. The war that killed many people. The Civil War. Yeah. So Trev, this episode.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
No.
What do you think about when you went to this episode? Did you feel like you were gonna fall asleep? Did you fall asleep? Did it make you blow your brains out? Are you still alive? Do you like khaki pants, Trev?
No, yes. On the back of a donkey and maybe.
All right. And that's been the Fifth Dimension of Twilight Zone podcast. Good night, everyone. No, I'm just kidding. No, what is it with? Okay, I'm not even going to ask you if you guys seen this episode before because I don't remember this episode either. But what is it with the Twilight Zone and Confederate episodes? I know it's like the Confederacy, or not Confederate, but the Civil War. Is there something like that we're not knowing? Is there something that we're not getting? Is like the Civil War? Is it used as a way to just bore you? I mean, like, are these episodes like, were they more popular in the 1960s? Like, what is going on here? Like, I haven't seen a Civil War episode yet that has been worth its weight in gold. And I love hearing about the Civil War and how demented it was and stupid, but like, listening to soldiers talk about it, through, books and stuff like that. Can someone explain to me what's going on in the Twilight Zone with Civil War episodes? Why they're so dry and boring? Anybody?
Don't really know.
I mean,
I've never nothing against Civil War, but I've not that I don't find it interesting, but when it comes to film and television, there's been some, but for the most part, I'm typically not super interested in Civil War era things. I mean,
unless Ken Burns is doing
been
it.
some,
Unless Ken Burns is doing it.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, there's been some things like what's it called? Good, bad, and good, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that takes place during Civil War. It's the Civil War. I could be wrong there, but
yeah,
like that whole era there doesn't really interest me that much. I mean, there's some tellings of it, but as a whole, usually when I hear, oh, it's a Civil War era episode or movie or something like that, I'm kind of like, we'll see where it goes.
I think it's more in the way that they approach it. Like, so far, because what we've had the Passerby, we've had this one. There was the one with John Wilkes Booth. Am I missing one, or is that just those three?
I think there's been like 3 or 4 episodes. I think I know the 1960s were closer to the Civil War than we are now, but it's just like you're in the midst of World War II.
Yesterday was too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But you're in the midst of like World War II just happened, World War One just happened. Do you
think it was because the 100-year, because it had been roughly 100 years?
Well, I mean, that's possible, but it's just like I don't know. It just feels like when you're going, it's like when you go into a class and they start telling you about I don't know, some random experience in 1952 with just whatever. It just I just don't feel that these episodes give anything of interest to this series, and especially this story, which could be interesting if told it's not in the Civil War. I don't know. This feels like the Mission Impossible 2 of Twilight Zone.
I mean, for me, I think that a lot of it goes down to a lot of the time when you have something not just necessarily Civil War era, but is based on the Civil War, and that's like a central part of it. It comes out of 2 things. It's either it's all about slavery and racism and stuff. Not saying that obviously slavery was a big part of it all, but that wasn't all the Civil War was about. There was a lot of stuff going on there, and I think I just kind of get, with a lot of tellings of it, kind of tired of hearing about that part. I'm not saying it's not important, but damn, I'd like to hear about some of the other nuances that were going on in the war. I would like to say with this episode, I was happy to see that it wasn't that. And also, you will typically get one that, I'm going to use the word here, but let me finish. Let me explain, that vilifies the Confederacy. Now the Confederacy had its issues. They fell on the wrong side. That's for damn sure. When it came to a few things, namely the whole slavery issue. I mean, there was slavery everywhere. That's one of the things that kind of blows some people's minds. It was in the northern end as well, just not as predominant. But they typically, when they're shown in film and TV, and you have that war, it just shows them. It's almost like as if like they're the Nazis and the northern the Yanks were the Americans or whatever. It's like they're just vilified evil. That's not really how it was. I mean, there were people fighting on both sides that were
Well, I mean, you talk
didn't
about
have as
all the
much of a
time.
choice. And it was where some people were just fighting because this is where I live. This is my land. This is my place. I'm fighting. Doesn't mean that every one of them was like some evil, terrible person who was fighting to keep slaves, enslaved. Some of them were just fighting because this is my land and there's an invading force.
Right.
That invading force comes from my own soil, but it is an invading force that is coming to take over my area. This is my place, my home, and I want to fight. And I don't think we see that enough. And I while granted, it does kind of go down a path in this episode with some witchcraft, very literal witchcraft. I did like how it wasn't like outright vilifying that side of the war. Now, I mean, yeah, they were wrong. Some of the things they were going for, I don't agree with, but I like the little nuances whenever it comes to especially big wars like that. Not everybody's just outright evil.
Right.
And it's nice to see that they weren't just vilifying them. I mean, if nothing else, the episode definitely has its issues, but I like that they didn't do that. They just kind of it showed this guy like he was just like, we're here, we haven't given everything we should, or people have given more than us. We're here doing a job pretty much.
Yeah. Well, you look at Northerners weren't angels by any stretch either. I mean, you get carpetbaggers that came down, during Reconstruction. They made a mess of things, and a lot of them were Northern. So it's nuanced. It's very much.
They came through and just took over people's homes and stuff like that.
Well,
absolutely.
You can look at any war, and you can look at both sides of any war, and there's good and bad on both sides. Like a perfect example of like American problems of war, the movie Casualties of War. These guys went and raped someone, and it became a massive problem. But on both sides, there were people on the Confederate side that didn't believe what they were doing is right, but they just do what they do. And
right.
Well, they believed what they were doing was right, but I think that they were fighting for something. Not all, but there was a considerable amount of them that weren't fighting for this thing because that war is, let's be real, it's boiled down to slavery a lot of times. And nowadays, when people talk about it, it's not all it was about. A lot of it was about power, land. Like most wars, almost every war that has ever taken place is you boil it down to land, and people want what you got. I mean, there may be other things in there too, but it is almost always down to, I want this, I want that right there. Somebody wants it, and somebody else don't want you to have it. I mean, so we go to war.
The Ukraine-Russia war right now is all about securing land.
It's just, and the thing that people, it's so easy for people to kind of like you say, boil it down. Nothing is that simple. Like the complexities of any war. Like you look at World War I, and it was, shot was fired at Archduke Ferdinand. It was building so much before that, and then one set of countries starts fighting, and then others are like, well, fuck this, let's get in on this too, because we've had grievances that have been building for the past 150 years, and all of that stuff. World
War II, we usually boil it down to the Holocaust, which is definitely very bad. Most people didn't know about that. Even the people in the war until after. That was one of the dark secrets they found out, and were like, they were doing what? They knew that there was some stuff going on, but they didn't know to that extent and what was going on until afterward. That war was fought because these psychos over here, or two separate psychos, got together and started taking over land that wasn't theirs, and then it grew and grew and grew, and then
it grew out of World War I, like the replication where Germany had to pay back like all the marks and stuff, killed their economy, and then that got Hitler into power, and then it went from there. So all of that
started with World War I. It all started there, and tensions
everything
were high.
rolls from something else.
Yeah, but like I said, most wars, we want what you got. You don't want to give it up.
So anyways, let's go. Let's get back on target on this episode. I know we don't want to talk about this episode, so let's talk about land.
I want to
land
talk
ownership and stuff like that.
I want to talk about this episode.
And I do have one other thought on the 3 episodes that we've had so far, as the Civil War thing. I don't know that any of them, and I know Serling wrote these or adapted them from other things, but honestly, I haven't felt like any of them have been that strong as far as stories. Like, yes, like I think that with all of them, there was an interesting like nugget of a story in each of them, but I don't think that they were brought off as well as they could have been, you know?
The strongest one, in my opinion, thus far would be Passerby. Definitely was not, but the Abe Lincoln one.
Yeah,
I thought that was a strong or interesting story. I just thought its execution was really fucking weird and not the greatest.
right.
I mean, if we're gonna, that one's Civil War era, but it didn't really deal with the Civil War. We didn't have like Confederates and Yanks and all that. I don't know, but if we're gonna call that one, I would say, in my opinion,
I
was the
assumed
strongest.
it was one, but
Yeah, I mean, it took place during that time, Abraham Lincoln, but I think that was the strongest narratively. It was just executed really bad.
Yeah,
or bad in spots. But how about this one?
Yeah, exactly. Let's
Well, since I guess before we jump into it, like real like balls deep, but since you guys didn't like the episode, and I've yet to say what my
I don't
thoughts on
I
it
wasn't I don't think I was Nick's level. I have thoughts, but I'm not gonna say that it's not like the worst thing I've ever seen. I actually don't remember this one.
I don't think any of us do. I don't. Nick said he didn't. Was there anything that from this episode that you got, but without spoiling where we go with it, that you took from it and said, "Hey, I liked that about the episode"?
Nope.
I think the back
thing.
So here's the thing. I feel like
something.
There's 2 stories here. And like the whole first thing kind of talking about the things that they talk about, and then the back half, and it actually started ramping up like that last 5 minutes. Like if they had taken that last 5 or 8 minutes and rolled with that, like that would have been, I feel like they could have ditched the whole first half, started it, as the guy is coming into the town, and then like take it from there and let the story play out that way, and kind of take it on from there. That would have been, I don't know, like there were 2 stories,
but
and
see,
both of them
like
had good places.
Well, you talk about an episode, the one with George Takei, about 2 sides of the coin, about reliving like the possibility of like it was, so you lived as a Japanese soldier.
Mm-hmm.
I think this episode would have worked with, say, for instance, the guy had died, the 2 people had, kind of used the last Civil War episode and kind of have a discussion about like, why we're in this predicament. But what this episode does that's so annoying is it takes a concept of like walking into a town that they've already done before with Elegy, and then throwing it into
Where is everyone?
some, yeah, well, that's the thing. And then you find the people, and then you throw in this mix of nonsensical sci-fi horror storytelling, and like that whole segment that we'll talk about could be good on its own. And so you're throwing into this Civil War story that just doesn't add anything to anything, and then you add in the end, which is just like, we're just going to completely just end it abruptly. It's so lackluster and so lazily done that it kind of just annoys me. It's not as bad as like Trouble Templeton, but it feels like a very lazy episode that doesn't feel like, it feels like it needs more than it's like you guys talked about the Midnight Sun episode where they're like, it just, there's something that it needs that it's not giving us, and I don't know.
I feel you guys. I think all valid points, all very valid points. But for me, what I, above everything else, liked about this episode, it has some of the greatest lines.
Oh God, yeah.
that we have received in the Twilight Zone thus far. And
please tell me you wrote them down.
I could not write them all down, but I got a few.
Nice.
And there's one in the very beginning. It's kind of long, but I loved it. I paused it and had to turn on subtitles because I was like, "What?" And like, I typed the whole thing out, and I suck at typing. But I mean, things like Johnny Reb and some of the other stuff, and I made the elegy remark as well. This really had some elegy vibes going on in at least part of it, but Yeah, let's we'll get to those. One of them's in the beginning. It's after part of the introduction, so I'll when we get there, I'll definitely quote some of these amazing lines.
In essence, it's
they
an
were
episode.
good.
Yeah, it's an episode about how far are you willing to go are you willing to damn yourself for all time type of thing.
Is the means to an end.
Yeah, exactly. The greater good.
But we start out with introduction to two soldiers. I don't know. I didn't really write their names down or care to write their names down. They're just two individuals that are part of the Civil War, part of the Confederate Army. They're sitting there talking to one another, and they hear movement down in the town, and they go to investigate. But there's like two segments to does Rod ever pop up in this episode?
Yeah,
in the second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
the opening narration split.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'll just let you read both opening narration. It's a lot of dialogue about, you know, the Civil War and how it affects both sides and how they're very much, you know, trying to keep the North down. And I don't know. I kind of was just not really into the beginning.
There was also a really, really great shot of a guy in the like one of the soldiers in the foreground, and then like the Confederate belt buckle was like huge behind his head. I was like, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah. All right, I'll do both parts.
Yay.
I think the first part is like at the very it opens with this opening narration. The first half. The time is 1863. The place, the state of Virginia. The event is a mass bloodletting known as the Civil War, a tragic moment in time when a nation was split into two fragments, each fragment deeming itself a nation. And then we have some stuff, and we go into when Paradine goes to go down to the town. Rod pops up and says, "This is Joseph Paradine, Confederate cavalry," as he heads down toward a small town in the middle of a valley. But very shortly, Joseph Paradine will make contact with the enemy. He will also make contact with an outpost not found on a military map, an outpost called the Twilight Zone.
Ooh, nice.
Now, this is where the first and probably my favorite quote of the show happens. It's actually right before that, right before he goes down, because I feel as if we were going to skip over that. These guys, it's these two Confederate guys.
They're scouts, and they're kind of forward scouts.
Yeah, and one of them in Paradine, he's like, "Oh, they hear they hear an army. They hear a whole bunch of people." And then they're like, wait, I don't hear them. They stop. It just instantly stops. So he says, well, we got to get down there and, you know, get a head count and, you know, scout, like Tripp said, scout and report back and let everybody know what's going on. And the other guy, Mr. What was
I don't know if he's ever named.
Yeah,
maybe
Dauger. It's Dauger. So I'm going to go with Dauger.
Doge. He's a Doge.
Whatever. He's him and his epically fake mustache.
Oh my God.
Come up and he's like, no, don't do it. Let's just go throw down our carbines, but he says carbines, and wave a white shirt, say we surrender. And he's been going on and on about kind of like with some cowardly talk. He's the younger guy. And this is when it happens. As Paradine is going to get on his horse, he turns around and bitch slaps the other guy.
But you know what, Doger, like, he takes that bitch slap like a man. He does. His head doesn't even turn.
Yeah, he absolutely does. But he bitch slaps him. He turns around and he says, "Mr. Dogger, I extend my sympathy so long as your yellow eats at your insides. But when it crawls into my bivouac, but how do you pronounce it?
Basically, it's a temporary camp. Bivouac.
Bivouac? It's bivouac, yeah.
Bivouac.
But when it crawls into my bivouac and tries to climb up on my horse, I withdraw my sympathy and give you the back of my hand."
Yeah.
I fucking love it.
You need to get that on a t-shirt.
The first porn started.
When it crawls into my bivouac, I like that word.
It's a good word. I thought it was like his skin or something, but yeah, it's a temporary encampment. Yeah.
Crawls in my bivouac.
Sure
I withdraw my sympathy and give you the back of my hand. Good shit right there. Right there, I was like, because I went into this one with Nick telling me, I think last night when we recorded, he was like, yeah, tomorrow's episode from what I hear is not good. That's how we started. I was like, okay, I'm with it. They've used bivouac, and also he just bitch slapped somebody, and I just like the intensity he had when he said that.
Oh,
that
very
part.
much. Will you try and incorporate bivouac into your daily life?
Absolutely, is a new word. It is now in my repertoire.
Nice.
Of
Jacob's gonna call his new channel the Bivouac. It's just gonna be him
This will be my
slapping people.
Patreon.
retro
Retro
Jake bivouac.
Retro Jake's bivouac. Come stay at Retro Jake's bivouac.
he has like a crowd. It's like something out of like UHF. It's just him with a bunch of people, talking. Welcome to Jake's bivouac.
Bivouac. Would you like to
Now,
come
the bigger
inside my
question-
bivouac?
Bigger question is, will you have a jacuzzi that's shaped like a Sega Dreamcast?
No, I'll have one shaped like a different console that I've yet to review.
Okay, I like it.
That console is the bivouac. But yeah, I mean, God, I really don't want to talk about this episode. This is a hard
suck it
episode
up,
for me.
Cupcake.
Not that bad.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
It's not
How about
Anyways.
that freeze
bad.
frame of the town though?
Yeah. Oh my
Speaking of
god.
Still Valley.
Oh, he's like standing.
Because like at first,
Yeah.
when it first, that's the first shot of the episode. It shows video of this town, like from afar, because you can tell it's like someone shooting the town, and then it just freezes.
With a carbine.
But that's not when the freeze happened. It's just in the beginning. It's supposed to be them looking at it. It's actual video. You can tell because you can tell when it's video or
Yeah.
picture.
Especially
just-
then.
Yeah, it just freezes, and then every time we see it after that, when they're looking down into the valley, it's just a frozen picture. And whatever.
And I have a thought when they get down to the village. I have thoughts on a couple of the things that they run across.
No.
Yeah.
That
Well, I
made me
mean,
laugh.
the 60s and 50s were notoriously known for doing freeze
Well,
frames.
I mean, the thing
Freeze
is,
If you
frame.
look at It's a Wild and Wonderful Life. Yeah. It's
they weren't freeze
I
frames
mean-
per se, but yeah, we'll get to it.
But I mean, like when he goes to this town, there's nobody down there. He's looking around. I still didn't know what was going on, and then
The
he
bell goes
turns
off and
around.
he
He
takes that
looks. He's like,
epic dive to the ground.
yeah. But he looks and gives that look, and then he starts walking towards the Union soldiers, who you can tell that it was very difficult to stay still for so long because some of them were quite moving pretty well. I mean, they're kind of like shaking a little bit and moving because they can't keep still. And I'm like sitting here going, "Yep, they're on a different planet. I'm sure of it. There's a different world. They're going to drink tea and die." And I mean, I didn't know because it's a very simplified story of man goes into town that's part of the Civil War, and he looks around and sees soldiers, in place frozen, and then he hears the sound of the like flower pot break or something like that, and he goes to investigate, and that's when we see the claw reach over. It's like this guy. I don't know what's going on here, but
I thought
the
it was going to be
person's
like a
hand-
village thing where it was like nowadays. Well, then days.
the
Yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Or like that
Yeah.
episode we watched over the 100, I don't know, where the guy went over the hill and he was in the 60s.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But-
The he's out in Death Valley. I kind of figured it was like kind of an allergy type of thing where like everybody, including him, was actually dead, but he had to realize he was dead before anyone would do anything. But
Yeah.
in terms of like all the people, because they do run across quite a few different groups of soldiers. There's one guy that's holding a barrel, and
Mhm.
I don't know whether they like, because I mean
I
even
didn't
the
see where
barrel
it was strapped up.
right.
I kept on
don't
looking for
know.
like, how is that really there? Is he really holding that like that? That sucks, even if it's light.
I thought maybe even they might have it like maybe fish line attached
Yep.
from above.
I
just
couldn't
so
tell
he
if it was.
I couldn't either. But I mean the quality of the video isn't necessary, or the film isn't necessarily that either. But
True.
that got me, and the fact that you couldn't see any horses.
Well, yeah, they couldn't get the horses to stand still.
Oh, I know. I had to laugh about it. It's like, well, they got this this food wagon, but they can't take it anywhere because there's no horses.
All the horses ran away. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't get shocked by voodoo. The hoodoo that they voodoo.
So what
Voodoo.
hell?
I mean, but that's the act break. Like literally right before we meet Old Man Prospector. That's the
Sneaky
the
Pete.
wonderful. Yeah, Sneaky Pete. I mean, what do you guys think of this act? I think it's incredibly boring and dry, and it's a terrible setup. I'm not I just can't with this
No, I
episode.
know.
Like I feel like
we
I'm in
kinda-
that dregs of like, what am I doing watching this Twilight Zone episode?
Well, that's the thing though. You're gonna get great episodes, and then you're gonna
I
get ones that
know.
are kind of eh.
I
Not
didn't-
everything
Why
can
I
be
wouldn't
Death's
watch
Head
the
revisited.
Scuttlebutt.
I
No,
didn't
I
think
mean
the setup was that bad. I mean, I wasn't like riveted or anything. But it was just they went down, and I made the LG connection. But beyond that, I was just like, okay, he's in the town. There's people
I
frozen.
was like,
What's going on?
I was like, what? I was
It
like,
was-
what
I've
random
seen
videos
worse.
on YouTube?
Yeah,
We've had worse setups in these episodes before, but I thought it was just it was fine. It was what it was. I wasn't really
I
blown away by it, nor was I offended by it. I just thought, okay, let's see where it goes.
yeah.
felt like I was
I
Alex
try to-
DeLarge. I felt like I was Alex DeLarge at the mental institution, and they had my eyes propped open like this, and I'm like dropping eyelids. And, like, oh my god, the horror.
You're saying that because you just watched that.
I
Yeah,
know,
exactly,
but
exactly.
hey. Anyways, what are you saying, Drew?
I'm always one like, and there are episodes that I fail to give like a decent chance, but I was trying to keep an open mind. Not really knowing where everything was going to end up. You were kind of like, okay, there's the hand. Clearly, that is going to lead us someplace. Let's see where this goes.
I mean, clearly, this episode, what it needed was a motorcycle chase sequence and jumping.
Oh God, no!
Yeah.
Wearing
Concrete
khakis.
bunkers
Ah, Jesus.
in exploding
You're
glasses.
mixing your mediums.
I am.
Or
Yes.
a knife going to your eyeball.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the act break comes back, and this is when the thrust of the episode happens, or the meat of it. And we are introduced to old
Thrust
Stinky
of the
Pete
meat of it.
prospector guy. Yeah, who
That's awesome.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe at this point I just forgot if he was there for a reason, but he has a book. It's a book called Witchcraft.
Which is
It's a book that he-
fantastic.
Right?
It has
It's like the
Encantos.
government cheese version of the Necronomicon. It just says
right?
witchcraft. They could have
He
Tell
was
them
the
to get
seventh
something else.
son of the seventh son, and
Yeah,
don't know.
At least maybe put it in like another language or something, like Latin. I don't know, but it was like just a tattered book that said witchcraft. Where'd you get this, Barnes? and
Yeah,
Noble?
like I said, well, that's what my point is. Like, this feels like a lazy ass episode where, they're like, oh, they found a prop that said witchcraft on the book in the Warner Brothers or CBS warehouse, and like, that sounds good. Hey, old man that's cleaning the floors in the Studio 65 or something like that. You want to become old prospector and be in a Twilight Zone
Even
episode?
the
It's just like,
font. The font was even written like some like 1990s Disney Channel witchcraft show book. It seemed like a
Nice.
book that would show up on the Wizards of Waverly Place. It had like this thing going
or
on,
Sabrina the Teenage
witchcraft.
Witch, right?
it didn't even have an eye on the front of it, like Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, something. I mean, but hey, it's the 60s. We give a lot, I guess.
No, they gave a lot. They got a lot of no craps. No, but like he talks about how he like froze the soldiers, and he froze soldiers and he freezes what's his face, and he says, yeah, I'm gonna unfreeze you. I mean, he like talks about this book and about how he's gonna die, and he just wants to pass on the book, of STDs and stuff like that to the next
Well,
guy.
STDs?
And,
There's a little bit.
What?
We're oversimplifying here. He
well,
he-
I'm trying to.
he tells him
oversimplify
he's
it,
a witch man. He
Like
said, "I'm a
his
witch man,
father.
like my pappy before me."
Yep.
He's
Who
a
was the
witchy-
seventh
witchy
son
man.
of the seventh son.
Yeah, and when he freezes him, because the paladin, whatever his name was, he doesn't believe him, obviously, and he reads this thing about the Prince of Darkness, freezes him like, he says, "How about it now, Johnny Reb?" Whatever the hell that means. It's
Isn't
like I
that
don't know what that
red,
means, but I got it.
I think that's John. Like that was kind of not the mascot, but like Johnny Rebel. I think was or Johnny Red. I think that was the one of the terms used for Confederate.
Oh yeah, because they
soldiers.
were like the rebels, right? Or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
they
Yeah,
were.
yeah, okay.
And Johnny
Alright,
was
Johnny
kind of
Reb.
the go-to.
Do you think the old prospector's favorite song was Rebel Yell by Billy Idol?
Possibly.
Definitely.
You think in the background he's listening to a song that hasn't come out for 20 years?
I don't get because I will
This
say
episode, yes.
I'm kind of I feel like I'm like bass backwards here with you guys, or at least you, Nick, because like everything leading up to this I was fine with. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I was just kind of like, okay, let's see what happens. When we got to the witchcraft stuff, I like some of the goofiness of it, like I'm a witch man, like my pappy before me and all that. I thought that was funny. But as far as from a narrative perspective, I was just kind of like, okay, this choices have been
that's my
made.
problem. That's my problem with this episode. There's some
Well-
funny stuff, but there's nothing here. There's literally like guys were
it's
frozen
all in the
because
last
he
few
had a
minutes.
book. Well, that's my point. Like he has a book that's like that freezes people, or you can read in cantos or whatever, and it freezes people. But he freezes this guy, and then he gets the book because he's dying. Okay, cool. What else? There's nothing here. Like it's so annoying.
Well, I
Like
didn't get
he talks
that.
about like, huh?
Because he tells him, he says, he's like, oh, when he proves to him, hey, yeah, I can do witchcraft, I can freeze people, I can do all this stuff, magic. He's like, so you can freeze the whole Union
Northern
Army.
Army.
And he's like, yeah. He's like, I will, or I would. He's like, well, why don't you? And he's like, because I'm gonna die today. It's like, okay, why don't you just fucking do it right now then?
Maybe
I
it's a
don't feel
case
as
of
if-
being close. Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe they didn't really explain
Well,
that.
if
He's
he's
just like,
close
I
to
can do
dying,
it, but I ain't going
why-
to because I'm gonna die later.
Yeah.
Well, why if he's close to dying, why would he freeze the Union soldiers in the town? Like, why would he care?
Oh,
Like, it
Because
doesn't
he's
make
still a Southern guy and he's trying to do his part.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but it depletes the purpose of what you guys are saying then, because like he's like, why don't you do it to the whole Union Army? I don't know, because I'm getting ready to die. So why the hell did you do it to the army that's in it? Just
Because
That-
Well,
that's
they
my-
were a threat. Okay, they were a threat to him in that moment.
An immediate threat. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe Triv's right. Maybe he does have to be like within, eye shot. It's
I
a
mean,
line of
remember
sight
we're
or something.
talking about a freaking 60s TV show here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I
I
was
mean,
assuming it's
but
line
that
of
does, it's
sight.
not an excuse.
I
Though.
know, but
I'm
I know what you're
saying
saying,
you
but it's
have
not an
to-
excuse because
No,
there's
I
episodes that we've watched that are way better that make more sense, that have logic and reasoning. But this episode is just a guy with a witchcraft book who freezes some Union soldiers, freezes the Southern soldier guy, and then gives him the book because he's going to die. I understand the purpose of like, you're going to you're going to do this, and you're allowing possibly for him to become a god in the world of the Southern Army and stuff like that. But it's just like none of this has any dimension to it. It's just two guys talking about a book that freezes, that has encantos and stuff in it. It just
Okay,
it's so
yeah,
frustrating.
no, but the thing is, you have to remember sometimes this was pulled from another source, so it was probably a case of, okay, this is what we need to do to adapt this to a teleplay. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do the other thing. There are certain things when you're talking those kind of short stories, they just it's when you it's like like Mission Impossible 2. There was a lot of crap that you have to turn off your brain and not think about because it doesn't make any goddamn sense. And I understand I understand that this is one of those things that shit goes off the rails and doesn't make a lot of sense. But in this case, to quote Invisible Boy from Mystery Men, just go with it.
Well, I think it is
Danny
also a means to get us to because what the episode's all about is the big decision in the end
Right.
and the whole last 5 or so minutes. So they just got to get us there. They got 24 minutes or like 20 minutes to get us to the last 5 minutes and have, set up the consequences and what, they just needed this old guy to be like, here, you've got this book now, go make it.
I know. I get it from a storytelling perspective, reading stories that I read.
Yeah.
No,
We're not denying
I
that.
get that. I know, but no, I get that. I think saying that you had to turn your brain off because this is an episode that sucks, it feels a little
I'm
undeserving.
not saying you have to turn
no,
it
no,
off.
no. I know that. I'm just saying, like, to say, to kind of forgive this episode because it's a sloppy episode is giving a disservice to the Twilight Zone in general, because it's like saying, oh, it's all right that a guy was being he's being haunted by a gambling machine and he falls out a window that's like 2 feet. Yeah, there was limitations, but it's like when the Twilight Zone is sloppily writing stuff and just putting out stuff there that feels like it's underserving its material. It feels like it's doing a disservice to what makes a great TV show a great TV show. And every TV show has this problem. You can look at Game of Thrones, you can look at Lost, you can look at Supernatural, you can look at The Price is Right. It just I'm joking about The Price is Right, but everything has a problem, and it just these are the episodes that, bother me so much because there's so much potential here in this story that is just not delivered. And I don't feel like it
Also-
should get a pass for being
I
a mediocre
think-
episode. That's just my opinion.
To speak on that, I think there's a difference between the Fever and this one, as far as like you mentioned, because you're making the point of like badly written. I don't think the Fever had a bad story. I think it was just terribly executed. It was just like, really. I think the idea behind the Fever and like the basic story of it is interesting. It's not like going to set the world on fire. I think it was interesting enough. It had something to say. I think this one has something to say too.
I'm not sure what that is, honestly.
What, this one?
I mean, I understand that it comes down to a case of you could take this gigantic thing and, but go, and use it to crush your enemies, but ultimately you're still aligning yourself with a very, very, very evil force.
Well, you got to sacrifice your
right,
your humanity.
But we don't get to that until that last 5 minutes. Like that last 5 minutes was where the story was. That's what I was going to
say.
Yeah.
Is I think that this one has something to say, but it doesn't really say much about it until the last few minutes. And the rest of the episode is just getting you there. Now, I mean, yeah, there's lots of stories, Twilight Zone or otherwise, that, the big thing, the twist, the thing you want to say is at the end. But I think this one just kind of drags it out a little bit to get to that. I would have liked to have maybe that last part, or at least the decision to give in or not or whatever, I think maybe should have been the second half of the story. Maybe all the stuff that leads up to there should have been the first half, and with the old man and all that, and then this whole second half, which would have been 12 minutes, could have been maybe him looking at the book and maybe him using it. We hear about how he uses it, which we'll get to that in a minute. Maybe showing him do that, and then kind of becoming a little power drunk with this power and seeing what all it can do, and it could do this, and then having him decide what he decides in the end. I think that the decision there that they have, that we'll get to here in a minute, the last 5 minutes, isn't necessarily a bad idea. It's just everything that led up to it was a bit sloppy. But I'm not saying that you had also mentioned, I'm sorry, but you had also mentioned that we should say, well, it was the 60s, it's sloppy, so we'll give it a pass. I'm not saying that at all, because if it's sloppy. And I do think parts of this were sloppy.
Right. I guess
other thing about this is... Oh, good. Sorry.
No, I'm what I was gonna say is I think the thing that bothers me so much about an episode like this is, let's say you have something like Lord of the Rings, and I know you're a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, but think about this: if you had a thing like Lord of the Rings and you had the ring situation, this is where I come up with the book thing, and you do nothing with the ring until the last 5 minutes of the movie. So you have 3 hours of just sitting around talking, not doing much. You have maybe something here, and then the last 5 minutes you have everything with the ring. And that's what the problem with the story is. Like I think was what you're trying to say is, if they took the idea of the soldiers having this book, maybe finding this book somewhere, using it, realizing that what they're doing is wrong, and you throw out that entire episode, that's fine. I think that works. But when you're doing an episode where you have, a guy going down to a town, there's nothing exciting about it. There's not like an exciting incident or exciting incident. It's just a bunch of like, how do we get to that last 5 minutes, which is not, something I want to. I don't think a lot of people want to see. It's like if you had, Peter Parker go through school and then get bit at the very end of Spider-Man or the end of the movie. It's just, I don't know. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think that the episode, I agree with you. I think that it would have been, it performs one of the sins, in my opinion, is that it tells, it doesn't show. And sometimes you do need to show, or sometimes you do need to tell, not show. But in some cases like this, like I said a minute ago, because when he gets to the top of the hill with the other Confederate, the rest of the Confederate army, and we have the more interesting part of the episode, he talks about how he did do something. He used the book to stop some people and stuff like that. But we don't see it. It just goes from, there's like this cut. It goes from like him and the old man. The old man's like, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna give you this book. Okay. And then like stuff happened, but we don't see it. We hear about it. I think we should have seen some of that stuff. Like I said, if we had seen, I think that would have made the episode a lot better. So I think we're on the same page there. I don't think I hated
Yeah.
the beginning as much as you. I admit that.
Well, I mean, you could
in
condense that. I mean,
retrospect, I do think the beginning was kind of like, all right, that's drawn out. Had it that happened, and then something more interesting happened earlier on, I would have been like, okay, the beginning was fine. It was just setting things up. I think they took far too long to set things up. They could have sped that along, made some cuts, and just cut it down to, like I said, half the episode. At the halfway mark, like the act break is when he gets the book, and then we see the repercussions of that and leave the end more or less the way it is. I think that would have been a more solid episode that we would have been able to, identify with more or connect with more.
Agreed. I actually look at this and I know that it was Rod Serling did the teleplay, but I don't know. It didn't feel like a Rod Serling teleplay. Like it just, I don't know. It just the way it was written and how long it took to get where they were going and stuff, and the fact that much stuff, it didn't feel like a writer of his ability.
Last week's didn't either.
True. I don't know, and maybe it was the CBS thing was starting to get to him. I imagine it probably was.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell it really starting to show that there's like cracks starting to break through. And this is what I've heard in general, just from people about how there's some really great episodes in the third season, but you're starting to see the issues from overworked individuals like Rod Serling. And I just think that we saw such like interesting ideas, maybe not well put out there in the first and second season, but they feel like they were a little more creative than what's happening here. Because maybe the short story is a lot of fun. Maybe it does what we're talking about, and they made the budget was really small. Once again, they just didn't have enough time and effort to do it. But like, the idea of this is gonna sound so stupid, and so you guys might laugh at this, but I was thinking about this really is stupid. I was thinking about the Santa Claus, right?
Mhm.
Where the Santa Claus falls off the roof and Scott Calvin picks up the card and puts on the suit. What if that was something like that happened here, where these Confederate soldiers are scouts and they come across this like grave site or something like that, and they dig it up, or anyways, there's a book there or something that says take this book and you can whatever. And then they took the book and they start doing crazy wacky things like the stopwatch thing or something like that. And I don't know. I just feel like maybe that's a little too ambitious for what they were doing in the 60s. But it brings up the whole idea of like, this guy just goes down there and sees a bunch of still people and talks to a prospector, old man prospector guy, and then gets the book. And then as we find out, they do what they do with it. But I don't know. I'm thinking too hard on this, I guess.
And it happens. That's sort of what we do. Like we go into this with a critical mindset, and you do, analyze it to the point that it might be considered overanalyzing. That's not bad as long as you can hold it within those reins. So I don't think you've said anything bad, Nick. we're not always going to agree on every episode, and I don't think anyone here is saying this is a top like 20 episode by any stretch.
Oh God, I hope not.
No.
Well,
I'm
Jacob,
just, but I'm just,
sure
but
you
I'm
would.
just saying,
Or
but I'm
top
just
24
saying.
at least.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
23.
Yeah.
I think we're probably
I think that
within. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think that we overanalyze things like that sometimes when there's just not much to analyze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the words of Mystery Science Theater 3000, repeat to yourself, it's just a show. We should really just relax.
I lived the life of Twilight Zone. I don't know what you're talking about. Jacob literally is still waving in the Twilight Zone somewhere. So we live this life, Triv. We live this life.
I live the Mystery Science Theater life, I guess.
Well, no, but you know what's funny? I'm complaining about this episode and its logic and reasoning. But then we get to the end of this episode, and I think this is fascinating stuff. This is what I think works about this episode, where they deal with the ramifications, what is your gut and your heart. And this goes into what Jacob you were talking about earlier with both sides are not necessarily all bad people, because they could use this book and they could win the war. It could be a what if scenario, but they don't. They throw it in the fire. They talk about God. They talk about not dealing with the devil. No putting small sticks on doors and stuff like that. It's just they make the right choice, and yes, they lost, but the conscious version of this segment is why I think they should have done through the entire episode, and they don't. And I think this is actually fascinating stuff that just kind of gets thrown by the wayside in the last 3 minutes of the episode, and it just that's where I lie. So
I do have a quick question. So when
yes, it was small.
Paradine and the other guy, Doge or whatever the hell his name is, like they're holding the book, and then like it drops, and it sounds like something shatters, and then like
it's my sanity.
Yeah. Then Doge is sitting there trying to like grab the book and stuff, and then it ends up in the fire. I don't quite know what happened there, because he was kind of fighting like, oh, but we can do the thing, we can stop them and everything.
Paladin, or what? I keep saying Paladin. Is that his name?
Isn't it Paradine?
Paradine. Oh, if it's Paradine, that's fine. But Paradine, he threw it in the fire.
He did? Okay.
He picked it up, remember, and he said it's just more or less.
Got it.
He was like, it's not worth our humanity. I mean, that's what it boils down to, is if you have the easy out for this, but you got to more or less give up your humanity, is it worth winning if you have to give up everything?
Right.
If you have to give up your humanity, what's the point in winning? And so he decides,
that's good stuff.
He throws it away, which I think would have been even more powerful had we just had something more than what they gave. Like I said, I mean, I've said it 3 times now. See him use it a few times instead of hearing about it, and that would have also been a little bit more visually interesting for us. Stimulating, yeah, good job, or good work.
Well,
it would have been more visually stimulating for us, a little bit more interesting, and I think we would have caught a bit more, understood that the difficult nature of that decision right there, because it would have been like, yeah, you got all the power in the world right there in your hands, but you're going to make the conscious good decision to say no, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And obviously, like Dogger or whatever his name was, he shows not everybody has that strength.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, Jacob's right, but we also got to remember that this episode would have worked if it took place in the medieval times. A man came down in 1965 or 75 beat up
Buick
Chevy.
Buick.
He had a chainsaw hand and a boomstick, and he read the Necronomicon wrong, and misspoke the words of the day the earth stood still.
Misspoke the words of the day the earth stood still.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually, this reminds me quite a lot of like a lot of those 80s horror movies where like, that's like you don't know who the killer is, and then it turns out to be like somebody's like 3rd grade teacher twice removed on their mother's side who had like a massive vendetta against someone.
Or that woman who has a penis.
Exactly. There's no indication of anything. The character's introduced like super late. There's no indication of anything with the character, and then they're like, oh, gasp! How could I have missed? It was you. It's like that there was no indicators of that anywhere. It kind of felt like that.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't come out of left field, but just the way it comes down, it's like, okay, if you had told me at the beginning where this was going to end up, I would have said, really?
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
But if it came down to being stressed out or trying to overwork or anything, it could have just been like he liked the original story and maybe he couldn't adapt it as well as he hoped. Who the hell knows?
I think the moral of the story is good.
Moral's great, and
the basis of the story is good. I just think the execution and even the screenplay, and that's not, I mean, I know you were talking about how it had bad acting. I didn't think the performances were particularly bad. I mean, Stinky Pete was a little over the top, but you're supposed
you'd
to
expect that though,
Yeah,
he's like the guy that played the dude in Will the Real Alien Please Stand Up, kind of the kind of over the top guy with the bulgy eyes.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with any of the performances or even the execution of the actual scenes themselves. It was more the execution of the story and just how it played out. Not even so much how it played out, how they presented it. I just think that they spent way too much time on setting it up when they didn't need all that. Right. They spent too much time setting up the premise instead of setting up the moral dilemma. And when we get to the moral dilemma, it seems like it comes out of fucking nowhere. It's like all of a sudden, oh, okay, this is what we're talking about. That's why we should have had more time setting up that moral dilemma in between the Stinky Pete scenes and the up there on the hill with the other Confederate guys.
That's awesome.
But
I learned
that's not
nothing
what we
else
got.
from tonight. It's Stinky Pete.
Stinky Pete.
Yep.
But they made choices,
So-
and that's what we're left with.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I mean, overall, it's I think I hated this episode more than you guys did, which will be
I'd say
interesting
so.
to see where we place this.
I'm ready for
I didn't
blood
hate
sports.
I didn't hate it.
No.
but
I'm
it
just
is
saying
not-
I hated it more.
No,
I
I'm
think
saying I'm ready
yeah.
for blood sports.
Well, I mean, you can watch that. It's an 82 movie where John Claude Van
Van
Damme
Damme.
fights a yeah. And he his master is the bad guy in Temple of Doom, and
Absolutely.
In all honesty, I really didn't. I did not hate this episode, but it did leave me wanting more, much like last
Same.
week's did. And I see potential there, and I like the basic overall idea. I just think that it was a bit long in the tooth with parts, and they should have. It's not the decisions I would have made, but who am I to tell Rod Serling how to write?
Nope. He'd
Right.
probably tell you go to hell. That's yeah. He'd
Go
probably
to
sit here and
the
listen to
Twilight
us.
Zone.
And he's probably rolling over in his grave right now, listening to us talk about the
You son of a
Twilight Zone.
bitch.
Ooh.
But,
I mean, the guy
anyways,
up to this point has written 76 episodes, approximately.
yeah, he's written a good portion of them.
Probably more than that. Like at the point of writing this, he'd probably written more than that because he writes other ones too.
Yeah.
There's going to be some that are lesser than others, and I do think I still stick to, and I mentioned this I think close to the end of season 2, or when we were doing our retrospect on season 2. I still say one of the reasons I think could be totally off the mark here, but one of the reasons episode or season 1 seems so solid looking back at it, I think they had more time to write those.
Oh yeah.
They weren't coming off another season. They had time to
yeah.
develop it. God knows when he started writing those or when they started compiling them all together. They had the time because they didn't have like they put that together and then they get the okay to make it. So he could have been working on it for 2 years, 3 years, who knows? Up to the point there was no like what am I looking
expiration?
No,
He didn't have a deadline.
Yeah, more or less. There was nobody thinking that hey, it's the Twilight Zone, you got to do good. But then when that ended, okay, season 2 is in however many months we got to start shooting. Then he's on a deadline, and not just that, people expect the expectation. That's what I was gonna say. The people have an expectation of what the Twilight Zone is. So now he's got to like double down, and season 2 was less episodes. That's probably why. And then we go into season 3. And it's the same thing. Now it's like there's a deadline. You start, and he starts writing these things or compiling them together. He doesn't have as much time as he had to spend with them and like kind of like flesh it all out with season 1. And that's probably, this is one of the casualties of that.
Well, even
or maybe it's
Burnout.
exactly how he fucking wanted it. And he's like, screw you guys. I don't care what you say. This is how I wanted it. I'm like, okay.
You could always claim Burnout too for something like that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. Burn out like I am with this episode. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you really hated this episode.
Yeah, no doubt.
I did.
I'm sure
Do
you'll
you
be
have a
shocked at
hate
where I want to
boner?
put this.
Do you?
I
do.
get your, and I do get your stance on it,
Yeah.
but damn, you really disliked it. Like it said, it ran over your dog.
Like, how big is your hate boner right now, Nick?
I mean, after doing it makes Mission Impossible 2 look like a genius storytelling.
Holy shit.
The Caligula. No, I'm just, yeah. No, but in all honesty, it's to me it's a really bad episode, but that's just me. It's ranked 135th in Place magazine.
Dang, out of 156. Oh wow.
It's above The Chaser. It's above The Mighty Casey and Caesar with Me and Most Unusual Camera, Man in the Bottle.
Well, Most Unusual Camera should be much higher than what it is there, but
Yeah, they have
another
Man in the
story for
Bottle,
another
like,
way.
really far down. But anyways, so that's the episode that concludes with them burning the witchcraft book and having a conscience, basically. But
before that, I do know that in the original story, apparently, when he threw the book on the fire, all the soldiers that were frozen unfroze.
Yay!
Which I mean, that may have happened with this one. It didn't really explore that, but that was apparently the end of the other one. Is that they unfroze when he threw that on the fire? Which I guess that makes
Made to
sense.
pee like a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think the prospector just caught him, like, because he made a deal with the devil? He just caught him in flames, and he's now rocking with the Easter Bunny and grandmother, and
That's the hope.
He got sent to Japan, but they may or have sent him back because the whole collection wasn't there.
True.
They didn't have Woody and Jesse and the horse. Just Stinky Pete. Anyway, let's get this closing narration out the way. On the following morning, Sergeant Perdine and the rest of these men were moved up north to a little town in Pennsylvania, an obscure little place where a battle was brewing, a town called Gettysburg. And this one was fought without the help of the devil. Small historical note, not to be found in any known books, but part of the records in the Twilight Zone.
Oh, so because they threw away the book, Gettysburg happened. Yeah.
Well, it probably was going to happen anyway. Just
Yeah.
the tide of Gettysburg changed.
Or it didn't change.
Yeah,
They'd used the book, it could have changed.
exactly.
Why didn't the book
Anyway.
just be a porn book or something like that?
Maybe it was. You don't know. Maybe
Maybe
all the
so.
letters were like, ladies in provocative, positions.
I mean, yeah, it's called
Sure. I mean,
witchcraft.
although
She
Satanic
woman.
book always have like some risque pictures in them and stuff. I mean, it's usually
Absolutely.
you get some TNA, but then it's got like a headless body or something. But you got to take it where you can get it.
Anyways,
Anyway.
yeah.
Wow.
So that'll do it
That
for
was a weird
still,
pause. I'm not going to lie.
Means an
Nick, do
angel
you need
flew
some
over.
time with your hate
when in
boner?
Rome. Yes, I
When
do.
there's an uncomfortable pause like that, that means an angel just flew over. That's what Karina told me.
Well, no, instead of the when you have a hate button, you're like. So, anyways,
Okay,
yeah.
move
so
on,
that's still
stinky,
Valley.
flaccid Pete.
Oh.
Wow.
I
Just
don't know.
throwing out the
Stinky
bombs,
flaccid
man.
Pete.
She's throwing out the fire bombs and everything, man. I'm telling you what. Anyways,
I was outside
so
working
that's still
earlier,
Valley.
So pretty sweaty.
Stinky
stinky
dick?
Pete right now.
Would you prefer stinky dick?
Stank dick.
You're like, you guys are like the
Stank
like
dick
that- I
Nick.
can't-
Penile
Well, no,
Pete.
But anyway, so that's season 3, episode 11, Still Valley. Let's do the Twilight Zone ranking list, the greatest list that Rod Serling would have loved, but well, he would have been very, very mad with. 76.
Number 3.
76.
That 3.
24.
We're just gonna start naming numbers. 23, 76, number 3.
Hut.
Yeah, this is the worst episode of the series so far for
It
me.
is not the worst episode of the
What?
series so far.
No way.
I think this is worse than Trouble in Templeton.
No.
Because at least Trouble in Templeton had an interesting idea that
So
though
did
wasn't
this.
executed very well, but was
What
way
was
better
the Trouble
than
of Templeton's interesting idea?
the
What
fact
the
that it
fuck was
all
going
like
on with the Trouble
a
of
play.
Templeton?
Exactly.
What the hell was going on with this episode? This is
No, you can't say that. You can say you didn't like it.
Should I go
but
get some
it was a
water? I'm gonna go get some water
cohesive
and come back.
episode. The story was, you understood the story. It was a cohesively told story. It was
it though?
not great,
I'll leave you guys to do the thing.
but I mean, never was I like,
Yeah.
what in the fuck is going on here? Trouble with
Don't rush
Templeton,
into things.
multiple parts. What the fuck? This one was
Okay, fine.
understood. It was
Okay,
just-
okay, you're right.
Could've been done
Okay,
better.
number 75 then, right below Static.
static. I don't even
I
remember what Static
I can't do that with this episode. It's just like this episode, it frustrates me to no end. Like there's a point where I'm just like, what do I
What's wrong with
do? What
Static?
do I say? Huh?
Which one was Static?
It was the old man listening to the radio.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That one, no. No way.
I
Better than that.
You think so? Oh,
Yeah, dude.
I could see it. So I saw a lot of Where Is Everybody in this one. I see it right between Where Is Everybody and Mr. Dingle the Strong.
no. I think
What
Mr.
number
Dingle
is
Strong is
that?
way better in this episode.
Oh, we're on like 69.
That had like
Um,
big nips on the head.
Where did we put the passerby?
Passerby was 59 or
58.
58.
The fuck was wrong with us that day?
We were smoking something.
I don't know. Because it was better than like King 9. I don't know.
What?
I don't know. You're asking questions which I don't remember. We're talking about like 3 years ago.
I don't know.
What about like 72? Right below the 4 of Us Are Dying.
I was more along with what I mean, you like this worse than 16 millimeter Shrine?
I didn't mind
16 millimeter Shrine is
Well, not
way
you,
better
Drew,
than this
but-
episode. Like
Look,
that
I'm
episode's like
surprised.
Oscar gold compared to
Oh,
this
for God's
episode.
sake. It's not
That
good.
episode has purpose.
It's got a porpoise? Damn, where have I been?
It has a
Well, that was weird. What the hell?
trying to do a dolphin.
No. No. Why are you a horse?
A horse.
We're doing
Yeah,
jazz
I thought you were
hands.
being a horse too.
A horse with jazz hands. That's impressive.
That's some good shit right there. Okay,
I will split the difference to say this is number 79.
Oh, you mean 69?
79.
No.
See, Where's Everybody's not a bad episode. Like, I mean, it's not a great episode. It's a very like dry episode.
It's the
but
very first episode, so
yeah,
It's
but
the
at least it
very
has. It's a very,
I literally just put something out there to get you guys on the track to start talking.
yeah, and I told you number 76, but you guys won't go there for it.
No, it's not that bad.
It's so bad.
Your face is so bad.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but it's still a bad episode.
Josh, I will yell at you a second time.
Your rebel yell at me.
Yes.
Okay, so-
Me and my billowhack will
bivouac.
we'll drop a billowhack on your head.
Okay, all joking aside from my perspective, Mr. Dingle the Strong, I think, did a better job of setting up its premise and then setting up its dilemma. I just think it's just wasn't. That is a tough episode. It's not very good. But Mr. Dingle the Strong had so much off the wall kind of goofiness to it that it kind of made up for it.
I would agree.
So I would put Mr. Dingle the Strong above this. 16 millimeter Shrine just didn't. I know it had a point, but it was so convoluted and just I don't know. It's like
It was done better in Sunset Boulevard.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think it was. I feel like the point, the message or the dilemma in this episode was better than that of 16 millimeter Shrine. I feel like 16 millimeter Shrine and this one share a lot in common as far as way too much setting up the world and not enough the dilemma. So I think they're very similar in that. So I sit there and look at them and say, okay, since they're constructed similarly in that way, I'm going to say I think this is better than 16 millimeter Shrine because I think that since they are similar in that way, I feel like this one's moral dilemma was more impactful to me, at least. So I would put it at 71 above 16 millimeter Shrine.
See, it's hard for me because 16 millimeter Shrine is not a good episode at all, but I like the idea of like a woman not accepting her past and then kind of looking that's where I kind of lie.
Where was
into
all
it.
this when we were talking about it back in the day?
Well, we're talking
don't
about the
think it's a
Still Valley
terrible
now, so
episode.
I have to find some positives to talk about.
Well, see,
I
mean,
there's the other thing is I don't think because then I look below that, The Four of Us Are Dying. While that's not a great episode, I found myself more entertained with The Four of Us Are Dying than 16 millimeter Shrine. So
Yeah,
I would put The
Triv-
Four of Us Are Dying over 16 millimeter Shrine.
I mean, Triv's
But
gonna
I
kill
think-
the guy as per our intro.
And I
Absolutely.
think that this one would go under The Four of Us Are Dying. So then I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'm split there because, you know, the way our list is.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's below The Fever, Static, or The Trouble with Templeton. Those were just all tough
I
to
mean,
get
I
through.
can concede the number 73. I can do that. Like I said, I would put
I'm
this at
gonna-
the bottom, but I can concede number 73. Triv, I know you have thoughts.
I mean, I said 69 or below, basically.
I know you like 69 below.
You're
so.
damn right I do.
I don't know. I keep
Yeah.
looking at 71. But then
I
again,
would be good with 7. Well, here's the thing. I would watch The Four of Us Are Dying again. I would probably watch 16mm Shrine. I watched this for the first time today, and I will probably never watch this again. So with that in mind, I would probably put it at 73.
Not only will I not watch this ever again, but I've deleted it. I've told Paramount to delete the episode.
Oh my
I
god.
said,
Did they listen?
I says Paramount. I said delete this episode. Never show it to us again.
Wow, so you
I
have
said you
that
can leave
much
the Trouble
clout.
Templeton there, but yeah, I do.
I guess
hey,
we
our
could-
podcast.
you
What
guys
is
are
that,
both
Jacob?
saying that. I was just gonna say you
Our
guys are
podcast
both-
is.
Oh yeah, we're
What's that?
definitely the best Twilight Zone podcast featuring 3 people named Nick, Jake, and Triv.
Yeah,
Yay.
Paramount agreed. So they said, yeah, we'll delete it.
They have to.
Sure.
Absolutely. Be
I,
crazy.
I,
not to.
I
No.
can concede to that because I know Nick, you're saying lower, and Triv, you're going with 72.
I would.
And I'm
yeah,
like literally 1 away from that, so that's fine.
Okay.
Splitting
There you
hairs
go.
at this point.
73.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know Triv really wants this at number 1, but I
I
just
wanted
can't
it
do
number
Triv.
3.
I don't know why. Like the Monsters Do on Maple Street are not number 3 anymore. So
I mean, this
Well-
episode did enter bivouac into my.
I know. It's a great flirt.
see, that's why
Fine.
that's why I'm conceding and giving it to you.
Banana.
as
Oh,
number
for God's sake.
73
Yeah,
because
hell,
of
like hell
Bivouac.
you are. And Johnny Rev. I mean, hell, that's.
Johnny
I mean, yeah.
Reb.
I mean, the Fever had no Bivouac.
A witch
or
man
Johnny
like my
Reb or-
pappy before me.
They
How
know
about,
had no
how about it
Stinky
now,
Pete, I
Johnny
mean-
Reb? I mean, now I did prior to this episode, I did not know what a bivouac is, but now it is part of my vernacular. So, yeah, that's something.
I'm excited for your vernacular.
Yeah, just
Ridiculous.
remember in your
Never
new
growing.
episode you have to put Bivouac in there somewhere.
Bivouac. Come, that's what I'm going to call my Patreon. I'm telling you, come to the
The Bivouac.
retro Jake
I-
bivouac.
If I
Have
ever get
people
this
everywhere.
Patreon up and going.
Searching what the fuck bivouac means.
Well, no, if I ever get this Patreon thing going, if I can ever figure it out, the number one tier will be Cups of Uranus. Number 2 will be Nan Adams drives over you, and number 3 Patreon or number 3 tier would be Bivouac.
Oh,
Bivouac.
there
How's
you
that
go.
sound?
I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the moment that I can insert that into a conversation and say it to someone as if they should know what it means. Like, how could you? You don't know what bivouac? Pff, simpleton, peasant.
Oh, man. So with that said, we've conceded, or I conceded, to not put this at the bottom. So yeah, new number 73 is still
Yeah, we'll put it
Valley.
3 spots from the bottom.
Yeah.
You conceded so much.
Anyway, so new number 73 is still Valley. Number 1, of course, is still Eye of the Beholder. Number 76 is The Trouble with Templeton. Next episode is called The Jungle. It feels, if I'm reading this right, it feels similar to like a Jumanji. Guy comes back, fears of animals.
Nice.
Yes, written by Charles Beaumont, directed by William F. Claxton, stars John Diener, Emily McLaughlin, and Walter Brooke. So we'll look forward to that. Triv, Jacob, now that we've gotten this out of our system, you guys both have content. I'll start with you, Jacob. You had a successful video, which is awesome, on your channel. You were
Yeah, I still have
hopefully
it.
the next video will put you over the making money again on your channel. Just
Take him
Hope so.
over the top. Yes.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm almost there. Well, kind of, sort of,
Yeah.
almost there. I'm on the downward slope to getting there. It's
Nice.
kind of exciting. I ain't gonna lie. Starting another channel is kind of scary, knowing how long it took me to get to monetization and like some reach as before, and seeing this one grow much faster than my last one. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty neat.
yeah.
Hopefully, my
So
next
where's that
video
content
comes out and is just as exciting. But you can find that at Retro Jake XY on YouTube. My other channel's still there, not releasing much as of right now, focusing on the Retro Jake XY channel, where you can see my Dreamcast videos. And another one, I just put a video out today, last week, as of this, as you're watching this, giving a tease as to what my next video will deal with. But that one's coming soon. I'm working on it now. Will come quicker than the last one.
Nice.
That's how the ladies.
That's
like
what she said.
Yeah, exactly. And Triv, since that's what she said, what would you say about your channel and your content?
It's a theater.
Theater.
The content does not match the quality of the theater, but it certainly deserved to be there because it's awesome.
I like it.
It's kind of all I got. By the time this drops, well, maybe not. I will be releasing something shortly around there. You can also check out my review of Bloodhook, which was a fantastically fun 80s movie set in Canada and set around Muskie Madness. The next one is Future War, and it should be dropping hopefully Monday or hopefully today, if not shortly thereafter.
Excellent. And with that said, my channel is Movie Emporium, of course. That's where this video and audio, all that good stuff lands. If you don't know, I am currently in the middle of doing an Indiana Jones retrospective, as well as one for Mission Impossible. Both videos, one for, of course, Mission Impossible 2, and one, of course, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, which feature these two yokels, or my droogs, I should say, yokel droogs, will premiere this week. So look forward to that. We have spirited discussions, which I find always fascinating when it comes to like these two films, because they're both considered kind of the outside Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, kind of the black horses or black sheep of the franchises. So, but yeah, look for that and then the upcoming Jurassic Park 30th anniversary retrospective with Rob Dodrell. But without further ado, that'll do it. Audio feeds, Anchor, SoundCloud, all that good stuff. But with that said, we'll see you guys soon in the Twilight Zone. And for myself, Triv, and Jacob, we'll see you guys soon. Peace out, motherfuckers.
Bye. Oh, we can't hear you, Nick.
No, I was going to continue the whole episode acting as if we could hear him.
Then we would have had to have re-recorded this and talk about it more.
No, I would have left it as is. It would have been hilarious.
Oh,
I wouldn't have to actually talk about this episode.
He could voice over the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could have Morgan Freeman voice it over for me. So, anyways.